Howdy, y'all. I'm Nick Walker, and I'm from the great state of Texas. I'm the branch leader at Sam Houston State University and an ACC ambassador. I have the pleasure and the distinct honor today of introducing Matt Briney to the stage. As the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, Matt Briney leads an ambitious vision to combine historical storytelling with advanced technology. He directs the library's AI-driven approach to visitor engagement, integrating dynamic, interactive exhibits and the Trailblazer platform, which harnesses artificial intelligence to create immersive, personalized visitor experiences across digital and physical spaces. Before joining the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, Matt served as Vice President of New Media at George Washington's Mount Vernon. He has also developed digital content, film productions, and mobile applications, all aimed at enhancing historical education. Earlier in his career, Matt built extensive experience in digital marketing and technology within the agency world, where he developed and led CRM analytics and interactive campaigns for high-profile clients. A graduate of Virginia Tech, Matt brings a lifelong passion for education, the arts, and technology to his work, redefining how historical stories are told through modern lenses. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Matt Briney to the stage. The great Matt Briney. Yes, sir.
Well, thank you, Nick. It's always great to have a fellow Texan introduce you. And what a summit. Are you all having a great time out there? I wish I had something like this when I was your age. I mean, this is really spectacular. This place, what do you think? Did everybody get out in nature and enjoy today? I mean, yeah, it's a tremendous place and tremendous organization to be a part of. We're excited to be here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about Theodore Roosevelt. I have a clicker. There it is. So, Theodore Roosevelt said, "There can be no greater issue than that of conservation in this country." And today, we gather not only to reflect on the past, but to recognize the truth that is both timeless and timely. Nature is not partisan. The land, the water, the air, they all belong to no party. They are not red, they are not blue, conservative or progressive. They are the common inheritance of every citizen, and their fate determines our own. In an age when division too often defines our politics, conservation remains one of the few issues capable of uniting us, not in theory, but in responsibility. Theodore Roosevelt understood this better than anyone. He was, of course, a Republican. He was also a rancher, a reader, a reformer, a Rough Rider, and a relentless force for public good. He hunted, he hiked, he governed, and crucially, he protected the land he loved, and especially the land that tested him. It taught him that stewardship is not a sideline. It is the center of citizenship. Roosevelt's genius was to see clearly what was at stake, to embrace both development and restraint, progress and protectionism. He didn't believe in standing still, but he knew that a civilized man had a duty to leave the world better than he found it. And so we start there, with Roosevelt's personal transformation, not in the White House, but in the wild. Not in Washington, but in the Badlands. I never would have been president had I not been for my experiences in North Dakota, Theodore Roosevelt. In September 1883, a young Theodore Roosevelt stepped off the Northern Pacific Rail train station in Medora, Dakota Territory. He had come to hunt buffalo, but what he found was something far more powerful. The Badlands were raw, unforgiving. They were wind-chased, canyons scorched grasslands, and the skies so wide they seemed to hold history themselves. It was a land where nature was not a backdrop, but a force, one that stripped you down and built you back up. Roosevelt arrived as a curious, bookish young man, but tragedy soon brought him back. In February 1884, Valentine's Day, both his wife and his mother died on the same day. Devastated, he returned to the Badlands, not as a hunter this time, but as a man searching for healing. Black care rarely sits behind the rider whose pace is fast enough, he wrote, and so he rode. He built 2 ranches, the Maltese Cross and later the Elkhorn, and spent long days in the saddle, herded cattle, chased outlaws, endured blizzards and drought. These were not leisure trips. They were lessons in resilience. The Badlands humbled him, but they also restored him. The land became his teacher and in many ways his cathedral. There is a line in Roosevelt's autobiography that speaks to this transformation. It was here that the romance of my life began. But romance, in Roosevelt's case, meant grit, hardship, and the realization that wild places are essential to our character. The Badlands made him a conservationist, not out of sentimentality, but out of firsthand experience. He saw how overgrazing had ravaged the grasslands. He watched as market hunting and unregulated expansion pushed species towards extinction. He understood that if we didn't protect these places, progress would devour the very beauty that made America unique. So when Roosevelt later sat in the Oval Office, he didn't forget the Badlands. He carried its dust on his boots and the lessons in his bones. The development of our resources and the preservation of them for the benefit of the whole people must go hand in hand. Theodore Roosevelt, 1908. Theodore Roosevelt was no stranger to industry. He admired innovation. He celebrated its strength and believed America's economic dynamism. He supported the building of railroads, the expansion of markets, and the responsible use of natural resources. But Roosevelt never saw economic growth and conservation as opposing forces. He believed they must operate in balance, with foresight and not just profit in mind. He understood something that we're still grappling with today. Unchecked exploitation of land, labor, water, or wildlife was not progress, it was plunder. And he had the courage to say so, even when powerful interests disagreed. During his presidency, Roosevelt worked tirelessly to regulate corporations and monopolies, especially those that threatened public lands. He famously challenged the railroad trust and stood firm against mining and logging interests that saw forests as disposable. Yet, he was not anti-business. He was pro-responsibility. He believed that industry could serve the public good if it was held to a higher standard. Roosevelt promoted what he called wise use. To him, conservation didn't mean locking nature away. It meant using it intelligently, sustainably, and justly for present needs without sacrificing the future. He once said, conservation means development as much as it does protectionism. He saw the federal government as the steward of that balance. Under his leadership, Congress passed laws that laid the foundation for environmental regulation, public resource management, and equitable access to natural wonders. Think about that. Over a century ago, Roosevelt was advocating for the version of the public trust doctrine, the idea that some resources belong to everyone and must be managed for a common good. And so he built a legacy, not just in policy, but in principle, one that calls on us even now to ask, how do we grow without destroying what makes us whole? How do we lead with both ambition and restraint? How do we ensure that prosperity includes the planet? The nation behaves well if it treats the natural resources as assets which must turn over to the next generation, increased and not impaired in value. Theodore Roosevelt, 1907. When Theodore Roosevelt entered the White House in 1901, the federal government had protected just 42 million acres of public land. When he left office in 1909, that number had soared to over 230 million acres. Let that sink in. 7 years, Roosevelt quintupled America's conservation footprint. He did more for the environment than any president before him, or arguably since. His achievements weren't symbolic, they were systematic. So what did he do? He established 5 national parks, including Crater Lake and Wind Cave, the beginnings of the modern national park system. He created 18 national monuments using the 1906 Antiquities Act, including the Grand Canyon, which he protected before it was a park. He founded 51 bird reservations, the earliest version of wildlife refuges, because species like the egret were being hunted to extinction for fashion. He designated over 150 million acres of national forest, helping birth what is known today as the U.S. Forest Service. He formed 4 national game preserves and laid the groundwork for regulated hunting and wildlife protection. And he pioneered the Bureau of Reclamation, advancing water infrastructure and irrigation in the West, but always with the health of the land in mind. These were not fringe policies. They were central to Roosevelt's vision of national greatness. He saw wild places as crucibles of character and sources of strength, vital not only for the ecological health, but for the democratic health. He believed that access to nature was a birthright, not a privilege, that every American, rich or poor, urban or rural, deserved to stand in awe before mountains, rivers, forests, and the sky. As he put it, the beauty of charm of the wilderness are his for the asking, for the edges of the wilderness lie close besides the beaten roads of the present travel. And yet Roosevelt also warned us. He said that without vigilance, greed would strip the country bare. His legacy was both an act of preservation and a challenge to all of us. Protect what remains, restore what's been lost, and always act with future generations in mind. The life of strenuous endeavor is the only life worth living, Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt's legacy doesn't belong behind glass. It belongs in the world, in the actions we take, and the values we live, and the futures we shape. That's the vision behind the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, now taking shape in Medora, North Dakota. It isn't a static monument. It's a living, breathing institution set in the very landscape that shaped Theodore Roosevelt himself, the Badlands. Harsh, healing, and profound beauty. They are more than a backdrop, they are a story's heartbeat. And that's a story that isn't about one man, it's about what a man stood for: courage, conservation, leadership, and citizenship, and how those ideals can guide us today. Unlike traditional presidential libraries, which often look back, this library looks forward. It's not just a record of Roosevelt's life, it's a space to connect to his values and today's challenges. Visitors won't simply observe history, they'll be asked to reflect, engage, and take part in the world around them. The design of the library encourages that sense of active participation. From immersive galleries to nature trails, it encourages guests to think deeply, move freely, and to consider their role in their own future. Because Roosevelt didn't believe in spectators, he believed in people who showed up, stood up, and stepped into the arena. And that's exactly what this library invites every visitor to do. Our duty to the whole, including the unborn generations, bids us restraint and unprincipled present-day minority from wasting the heritage of these unborn generations, Theodore Roosevelt. The Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library is not just a place about Roosevelt, it's a place about built in his spirit. That spirit starts with the land. Not in a major city or a college campus, but perched on a bluff on the edge of Theodore Roosevelt National Park, the only park named for a person. The library's architecture doesn't dominate the landscape, it listens to it. It follows the contours of the terrain, it blends into the colors of the Badlands, it respects the wind, the light, and the silence. Roosevelt believed that our connection to wild places was essential to democracy. So it makes sense that the library honors place first, not as ornament, but as principle. This isn't just a building, it's a model for how to build responsibly, and it's regeneratively. The library is pursuing the Living Building Challenge. It's the most rigorous sustainability standard in the world. And what that means is it's going to generate 105% of its own clean energy through photovoltaic canopies. It's using geothermal wells to reduce heating and cooling impact. It's managing and purifying its own water on site. It's rethinking and reducing waste, challenging new ways of construction that sources sustainable materials and building practices, and featuring a prairie roof seeded with native species that bloom across the season. The goal is not to be just less harmful, but to give back more than it takes. Which brings us to the project at the heart of the vision, the Native Plant Project. The land where the library stands was once degraded by overgrazing and invasive grasses, but that's changing. Through partnership with local landowners, botanists, and North Dakota State University, the library team is restoring the site using locally sourced native seeds, grasses, wildflowers, forbs, that support pollinators, birds, and soil health. This isn't a decorative landscape, it's an ecological restoration designed to heal the land, foster biodiversity, and mirror Roosevelt's belief that stewardship begins with the ground beneath the feet. And it's not happening behind closed doors. Volunteers, students, families, nature lovers are all actively involved in the process, together planting a new legacy rooted in resilience. This is what it means to carry Roosevelt's vision into the 21st century, to treat the natural world not as a resource to be extracted, but as a community to be cared for. The first requisite of a good citizen in the republic of ours is that it shall be able to be willing to pull its own weight, Theodore Roosevelt. The Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library isn't just a place to learn about Roosevelt, it's a place to live out his ideals. That begins with programming, education, entertainment, and action are all at the heart of everything the library does, from national events to hands-on local experiences. One of the most innovative tools is called the Trailblazer. It's a personalized interactive platform that begins before the visitors even come on site. Trailblazer guides guests through the library like a mentor. Using wearable tech and mobile interface, it creates a choose-your-own-adventure experience shaped around the core themes of Roosevelt's life: leadership, conservation, and citizenship. Guests collect digital badges by exploring exhibits, competing challenges, and reflecting on how TR's values resonate their own lives. Along the way, they might stop to hear Roosevelt's words, record a message to their future selves, or pause in a quiet nature moment space. This is storytelling that doesn't end when you leave the building. Trailblazer continues after your visit with personalized content, reading lists, service opportunities, and messages that echo Roosevelt's call to stay in the arena. But the library's reach goes beyond its walls. The TR Library Speaker Series brings diverse voices, dialogue on civic leadership, conservation, democracy, taking Roosevelt's bully pulpit into the 21st century. The TR Scholars Program nurtures emerging leaders like yourself who exemplify Roosevelt's ideals through mentorship, research, and action-oriented community projects. The Good Citizens podcast, hosted by Teddy Roosevelt V, sparks essential conversations about what it means to be a good citizen today across party lines and generations. And Teach with TR is putting resources in classrooms nationwide, bringing Roosevelt's story and the stories that inspired him to the next generation. These programs are not about nostalgia. They're about activation, empowering people to think more deeply, bravely, and serve more boldly. Because for Roosevelt, the measure of life wasn't in comfort or ease. It was in effort, purpose, and the willingness to engage, even when the path was hard. That's what the library invites us all to do. It's not the critic who counts. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. Theodore Roosevelt's Nobel Peace Prize speech, Citizen in the Republic, 1910. So we walk through wilderness and memory today, from the Badlands that shaped the president to the library that now rises in a name. But if we leave with nothing more than admiration, we've missed the point. Roosevelt's life was not about being remembered. It was about being useful. He believed that greatness, whether personal or national, wasn't found in comfort, but in conviction, not in applause, but in action. He didn't always get it right, but he showed up. He fought for forests and fairness, for people who agreed and those that didn't. And now the baton is in our hands. So ask yourself, what do I believe in deeply enough to defend? Where is the arena in my own life? And am I willing to step into it? What future am I building for those that come next? That's what the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library is really about. Not a memory, not just a museum, but a living invitation to lead, to learn, to conserve, to serve, to embody the values of the man who once wrote, "Do what you can with what you have where you are." So let's do exactly that. Let's be brave enough to act with principle, bold enough to speak with clarity, and humble enough to steward the world we've never been given. Nature is not partisan. Responsibility is not partisan. Leadership is not partisan. They are Rooseveltian. They are American. And they are ours to protect, to live, and to pass on. Thank you.